Hi, I'm Ceisiwr Serith. I'm the priest and liturgist of Nemos Ognios, the Grove of the Living Flame, a grove of nDraíocht Féin, or ADF, which is the largest Druidic organization in the U.S., with members in groves in other countries as well. In this video, I'm going to describe my grove's sacred space. Most ADF groves don't use a sacred space, or at least they define it only by its sacred center, where ADF puts what we call the hollows, which I'll talk about later. But Nemos Ognios is more reconstructionist than many of the other groves, and since the ancient Indo-Europeans were big fans of enclosed sacred space, we are too. It should be noted, though, that worship without marked out space was also found in ancient times, and that we mean no disrespect to those groves that use just a center. The photos I'll be using come from two different rituals, and there will be ones from before and after the rituals. The first can be disregarded since we use the same layout for most of our outdoor rituals. Whether they come from before or after makes more difference since we have more stuff in it afterwards and some things have been rearranged. I'll point out these differences when I come to them. They don't involve any changes to the overall organization of our space, though. Our space is marked out in a rectangle. This may seem odd to many neo-pagans who are used to worshipping in circles. However, rectangles were the most common shape for sacred space among the ancient Indo-Europeans. I believe that this is because they worshipped facing east, and a rectangle provided a clearer definition of direction than most simple shapes, especially a circle. A rectangle whose long axis is laid out east-west is especially useful for Indo-European worship. So we lay out a rectangle. In another video, the link to which is in the description, I show an easy way to mark out a properly measured rectangle on the ground. Since Nemos Ognios worships in the same space each time, the holes we put our corner and gate posts in are well established, so we don't have to measure it out each time. We just find them before our sacred space creation ritual and mark them with sticks so they can easily be found. I put a link to the script of that ritual in the description. I hope to post a video of us performing the ritual, but if I do, it won't be until the spring. When I do, I'll put a link to it in the description as well. We mark the corners of our rectangle with 4-foot poles made by cutting 8-foot garden stakes in half. We use the cutoff pieces for firewood in some of our rituals. The first thing you encounter when going to our space is the gate, which has 2 poles with a grapevine wreath on each side. The poles are the same kind as the ones at the corners, only uncut, making them 8 feet in length. We hammered nails in them, with some sticking out, to give us something to hang the wreaths on. The poles and wreaths together form what's called the Druid Sigil. This is a symbol used by some Druidic groups, including ADF. Its meaning is indeterminate. I like to think of it as a gateway opening or closing. The poles together define the space. For the time of the ritual, we consider them to be the corners and eastern edge of walls, so we don't cross the virtual lines between them. These borders are marked in the ritual which establishes our space. However, we don't trace them across the gap between the gate posts. Our space isn't hermetically sealed like a magical or Wiccan circle then, and anyone may come or go at any time during our rituals as long as they use the gates. Let's talk about the hallows. These are the shaft, the fire, and the tree. Together they form the sacred center of the cosmos represented in our sacred space. Let's start with the ritual shaft. Most ADF groves use a bowl of water for this and call it the well. We call ours by the Roman term mundus. We use a ceramic pot and think of it as a shaft into which we can put offerings. This allows us to make ones which are permanently given away. When the mundus is full, we transfer some of the offerings into a new one so as to preserve ritual continuity and seal the old mundus with quickcrete and then bury it. When not in use, we cover the mundus with the tile you can see on the ground next to it. Also in the picture is a bowl of kidney beans. Dried legumes are traditional offerings to the dead, so we make sure some are available in case anyone wants to do that. The second of the hallows is the altar fire, which we call the Ognios, one of the Proto-Indo-European words for fire. To make things easier, I'll just call it the altar here. This isn't completely correct, though, since we have another fire, the hearth, which we use as an altar as well. In fact, at one point in the ritual, we say that the true altar of the people is the hearth. We call this by the Proto-Indo-European word for hearth, which is chasa. You don't see it in these pictures at the beginning of the ritual because it starts out outside the ritual space, at the place where we start our procession from. You can see it here, the cauldron with the sand and briquettes. You can also see a lighter, a small pitcher of lighter fluid, a bowl of melted clarified butter to offer to the fire once it's lit, the axe we'll use for the sacrifice, a pitcher of mead we'll use for a libation, a fire glove so the fire tender can carry the cauldron safely, and the horn we use to call people to the ritual. After a short ritual of purification, declaration of purpose, lighting the fire and offering butter to it, we process to our space. Once there, we offer to the Earth Mother on a place just to the west of the altar and put the chasa there. We transfer a briquette to the altar to light it. Toward the end of the ritual, a coal is transferred back to the chasa to complete the cycle. In this picture, you can see the altar laid with wood and dryer lint, ready to be lit with extra wood piled under it. The altar itself is a low square barbecue filled partway with sand. In Indo-European ritual, public altars were square, while hearth altars were round. The chasa is shorter than the altar, which allows for the symbolism of ascending from the everyday home to the place of public sacrifice. You can see here a blanket for the fire tender to sit on. It's wool, so it won't ignite easily from stray sparks. There is a bell and striker she uses during the sacrifice, 2 spoons, one for incense and one for melted clarified butter, a dish of matches in case the briquette isn't enough to get the fire going, a dish of powdered incense, a bowl of lighter fluid, and a pastry brush with which we sprinkle the lighter fluid into the fire during our Waters of Life consecration rite, a pitcher of water to extinguish the fires, and the lid for the chasa. At the top of the blanket are the things needed for the Waters of Life, their bowl, cups, and a ladle. The bowl of butter hasn't been put out into space yet. We melt it right before the ritual, so it will stay melted longer. The basket and bowl of dirt are there for this particular ritual, which was for the fall equinox. The picture was taken facing west, so the blanket is to the north of the fire. In this way, the fire tender can sit facing the bright south and away from the dark north. The last of the hollows is the tree, which is seen as the axis mundi and reaches up to the world above. The most famous example of one of those in Indo-European mythology is the Nemos Ognios. For the tree, we use a tall pole on which we've hung a number of things: feathers, shells, seeds, yarn, ribbons, stones, pine cones, toys in the shapes of animals, etc. The idea is to represent the animal, vegetable, and mineral kingdoms with natural things and things made by human hands. In this way, the tree represents the entire world. To emphasize its cosmic nature, there is a bear and an eagle on the top, the bear standing for Ursa Minor, where the pole star is, and the eagle the one found at the top of the cosmic tree in a number of traditions. And at the base of the tree is a bag containing a snakeskin and a wolf's tooth, standing for the forces of chaos from which the world is formed. Attached to the shaft of the tree are round pieces of wood on which we've painted symbols of deities we invoke in our rituals, plus those important to Grove members. As you can see here, the 3 hollows line up on the west-east axis. They start with the mundus, which comes up from below in the west, where the sun sets, then the fires, which are on the earth, and then the tree, which extends upward in the east, where the sun rises. The axis on which they are laid can therefore be thought of as the vertical axis between the worlds, mapped out on the physical axis of our space. That completes the border and center of our space, which are what make up the space itself. Before ending this video, however, I thought I'd talk about a few other things which are found in the space. In the west is a small table we call a spelta, which is Proto-Indo-European for board. It's far enough away from the mundus to give people space to pass between the mundus and the priest who stands at the spelta. The spelta is made of 2 low stools with a cutting board on top of it. It's important to remember that it's a table, not an altar, since offerings aren't made on it and the gods don't sit there. On the spelta is a mat which is silver and white. This is there to look pretty and to provide something to put things on. The open space in the middle is where the sacrifice will be put before its consecration. The sacrifice is a red velvet cake in the shape of an appropriate animal which is frosted in a suitable color on a large silver plate. In the picture, you can see a bowl of water for purification, a bowl of barley flour which is scattered on the sacrifice to consecrate it, and the knife which will be used to cut up the animal after it's been killed. The actual sacrifice will take place at the foot of the tree, though. On the ground next to the spelta is a rattle. Everyone at the ritual has a percussion instrument to use during songs and at the other points in the ritual. The base of the tree is where we put images of deities. We always set up an image of Ceisiwr, the Proto-Indo-European god of social unity, who's one of the patrons of the grove. That's the image on the right. On the left is where we put an image of the gatekeeper, a god we pray to make it easier for the deities to come to us and for our prayers and offerings to go to them. Who the gatekeeper is depends on the ethnic tradition we're working in. Since this was a Proto-Indo-European ritual, our gatekeeper was Pachoson, the Proto-Indo-European god of shepherds and merchants. These images are set up during the ritual, so this picture was taken after it. You can see the cover for the sacrifice and the knife after it was used to cut the sacrifice up. You can also see the bag at the foot of the tree containing the snakeskin and wolf tooth. To finish off this video, here's what the altar looks like after the ritual. You can see the chasa in its place. Things are a bit messy at this point, but it's a good mess, one that leaves me with a feeling that something's been accomplished. So that's our space. It looks a bit more complicated than it is. Everything is where it is for a reason, so it's pretty easy to remember what goes where. If you'd like to know more about it or about what else to do, check out the links in the description or ask in the comments section. If you find this video interesting, check out my other videos and please consider subscribing. Thanks. Bye.